So the last video cut out. That was like the fifth time I've had to try to do it. So I just made it 5 minutes. It started acting up at the 5 minute mark. So I apologize for that. This will be part two. So hopefully this one gets further along. Again, I'll be jumping back and forth to make sure that clock is working. Now, in these expeditions, the Europeans are going to not just have soldiers and sailors on these things. They're also going to put on scientists. And again, they're going to these new places. They want to make sure they're able to catalog and they're able to figure out, how to maximize their return on this investment. And they'll send scientists on these expeditions across the Atlantic who would go over there and ask the questions and solve some of the problems that were going on over there. One of the most famous one, scientist that goes on this expedition, and many people argue he has the greatest single thought ever out of any scientist in history, maybe exceeded only by Einstein's theory of relativity, but is Charles Darwin. And you see this in his theory on evolution. And he's going to write a book that becomes a bestseller eventually, and it's something that really grips the public at the time. And Darwin has this whole idea of evolution, that people, or not people, things, animals, insects, they adapt to fit an environment. And it's that kind of leads to this theory of survival of the fittest. Now, he never uses survival of the fittest as his terminology. It's actually by somebody else named Herbert Spencer. But you're going to see Charles Darwin. He's going to kind of have this thought of how the power of evolution is how species adapt over time. And man comes from animal. And it's revolutionary at the time. It is something that some people do not believe. But a lot of people are swayed by this theory of evolution and his arguments in his book. And we also see these Europeans traveling over here. They're also going to bring back silver and gold. Spain's going to get a lot of silver from places like Bolivia. I believe it was Bolivia, which obviously wasn't a nation at the time, but that region. And they're going to be bringing that back. The Aztecs and the gold will be heading back to Spain as well. And they're going to really become very wealthy off of this Columbian exchange. And again, as I mentioned, we also see these Europeans bringing crops and animals back to Western Europe, and like Ireland and the potato. They're going to potatoes naturally to the Western Hemisphere, to places in South America, and we're going to see it grown in Ireland to feed these people. And we'll see the population of Western Europe really balloon as a result of this food and this abundance of it. Now we look here at the Industrial Revolution. We need to first think back at the Scientific Revolution, the scientific method, and asking those questions and solving these problems. And we'll see the Industrial Revolution really. It starts off gradually, but it's going to really start to snowball. It's really going to start to go downhill and move quicker and quicker over time. And just like today, we have change that happens so fast with all these new innovations, new ideas. This is going to be the Industrial Revolution at its apex in the late 1800s. Now, the Industrial Revolution technically starts 1730 in a place called England, which we'll get into England more as this unit goes on. But this is like the new shrines of the day, in the sense of this is where people are going to be going. And, it's really, I don't want to say worshipped, but it's thought highly of at the time by many people. And we see these huge factories, and they start to be built around cities. And again, it starts in England, and it's going to spread in Western Europe, eventually in America, and we'll see it, the byproduct of today. And we'll see really what the Industrial Revolution does. It really organizes labor, and it gets people working in these factories where they're going to start to mass produce goods. They're going to find more efficient ways, and companies still do that today. Have to find more efficient ways to produce things. I mean, look at the coronavirus, what it's forced companies to adapt, to change their whole approach of doing business and become more efficient. Some of them becoming more efficient in this new world we live in right now, which is a crazy world. Now, we see this Industrial Revolution. We see it's going to these factories be filled with not only men, but also children, also women. And we'll see many of them are going to be taken advantage of. They'll be exploited. And again, those who are skilled are able to kind of have more agency in these factories, more power. And those who are not are going to be taken advantage of by some owners. Some owners will help. We have good owners as well who help educate, make sure that their people are treated fairly and justly. and other owners who are going to be all about the dollar. And, depending on what owner you worked for. And obviously those who took care of their employees were those who were sought after. They were hoping to. Now, this Industrial Revolution is going to lead some rapid progress. And it goes back to Newton's whole quote on the only reason I see so far, and I'm paraphrasing, is because I stand on the shoulders of giants. And we'll see like a lot of these innovations that come about, these new technologies, will be because of somebody else's technology or new innovation makes a person think of another way to use it or some other means of doing something. And we'll see that this Industrial Revolution, this progress, is going to lead to a lot of energy. And we'll see people being able to travel and live further distances away from where they're working. And we'll see, by the late 1800s, a century and a half after the Industrial Revolution starts, we'll see inventions like the bicycle pop up, late 1800s. We know the Wright brothers obviously had a bicycle shop in Dayton. We'll see the automobile start up in Germany by a guy named Carl Benz. Benz would be something I'd like to drive one day, huh? We see railroads are going to take off, and they're going to, start by going 15 miles per hour, and then they'll eventually speed up. By the late 1800s, you'll see them going 55 miles per hour. And this is going to allow people to live further away. They're going to allow people to start going on vacations. You're going to see people being able to live outside of a city. You're going to see people being able to, or countries and governments being able to load these trains up with soldiers and travel them to places and conquer different areas. So we see that this is going to really lead to towns ballooning. Those who are on the railroad route, it's kind of like the highway today. Those who are along the highway, those cities tend to develop and balloon, where those who are not by a highway tend to be low populated. Lower population density, which means people don't live as close together. But we're going to see population density going to go up in these countries who industrialize, with people living closer and closer together because they're moving to the cities. And moving to the cities, people are obviously living closer in New York City than they do in Magnolia. Now, we also have the agricultural revolution. We're going to see technologies on the farm are going to enhance, which is going to allow for farmers to harvest and till more land. And you're going to see a less need of people farming. And where 9 out of 10 people farmed in the day, you'll see that shift to only 2 out of 10 farming today. And, we see that this really changes the, landscape of the workforce and what people are doing. So this is kind of capturing that energy of the day. We'll see people also living longer. We'll see medicine go up when people identify germs, for example, microbes that are discovered, and how to, making sure you clean your hands and kill germs before you operate on people or, before you eat. And we'll see just little things like that. And vaccinations, we'll see life expectancy really skyrocket. And, we have the 7 billion people today as a result of them discovering this stuff in the past. Now, we see other technologies as a result of the Industrial Revolution. We'll see communications take off. You have the telegraph, which is, going to allow people to communicate, not only just from, New York City to Philadelphia, but also eventually New York City to LA. And you'll also have the oceanic cable will be built in the 1800s that allows Europe to communicate with America. And this cable will be underwater, and it'll be established there again. It's 2,000 miles, and it connects the old and the new world from one another. And we also have the penny newspapers. If you ever see the Newsies, the musical, those newspapers are cheap. Information is cheap. And we also have steamships, and this is going to allow ships to travel further distances and not be reliant on the wind. And it takes a lot less labor getting across these oceans. So this is all a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution. Eventually, we see it really hit its apex in the Wright brothers flying the airplane in the early 1900s. So this is looking at the Industrial Revolution. I asked you folks to watch the videos. We see that change used to be slow in the past. We're going to see things speeding up. And we're going to see this development of cities as a result of Industrial Revolution, and people living, again, in these urban areas. Urban's a good term you need to make sure you know. And leaving these rural areas to move into these places for jobs, for a higher standard of living, or just for a change of scenery. So we see this. Here's some terms you need to make sure you know, along with urban, which means city, and rural, which means countryside, and suburban, which means those areas just outside the city. But globalization, industrial revolution will lead to this globalization. The world's going to be shrinking figuratively with this communication revolution and the ability to travel further distances faster, which leads to people being able to connected. But this is also a downside today. I mean, look at the coronavirus. You can have somebody with the flu in China in the morning land in New York City by the evening, and you could see that disease spread rapidly. And we can see the effects of this, whether it's Ebola, whether it's AIDS, whatever it may be, Spanish influenza of the past, 1918, globalization, and we can see, like, with the economy is going to take a hit here, as it has. It's going to be a worldwide effect, and this is the byproduct of this industrial revolution. Mass production, just producing goods very quickly. How to mass produce? You have to have interchangeable parts. If you're replacing a gun part, instead of having to have a new gun, a custom piece, we have another piece we can get quickly. An automobile, making everything the same size and the exact same dimensions, so we can replace things quicker and easier. Monopoly. You guys, hopefully, if you watch that, Luxottica kind of captures that modern approach of monopoly, but these monopolies start popping up. We'll see it with Rockefeller and his oil company. And when you study American history next year, laissez-faire. This is that whole idea of government's hands off, that the government does not get involved in economics or businesses. They control their own. We don't have a laissez-faire system today. The government's trying to help out these businesses the best they can with loans and stuff like that. So laissez-faire at the time, though, governments allowed the business owners to do and act however they wanted to their employees and their people. Now, questions to ponder: this age of progress, this industrial revolution, does the progress really end? And where has progress led us? Is change always better? And then I misspelled this, but to make an omelet, I'm going to fix that right now so you guys can't make fun of me. To make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. And do you agree with this quote? And it makes you think a little bit. It's a quote you'll hear in your life, I'm sure, another time if you haven't heard it already. When you're making an omelet, is it okay to break some eggs? And it's, again, something to ponder. Now, the impacts of the Industrial Revolution is going to be felt in politics, in the social environment. Politics, obviously, is good with the government. Social, you're looking at the everyday life, the standard of living, to where you live, to who you interact with, and also the economy will be impacted by the Industrial Revolution. Now, what I'd like for you to do right now is to pause this video and actually jot down these things. This is the impacts of the Industrial Revolution on the economic, the political, and social. When you guys take your air test next year, as your sophomore in American history, they're going to expect you to know this is the impacts of the Industrial Revolution on these different fabrics of society. And this is also, you're looking at as well, how gender roles changed, how family life changed, and how social structures changed. So you're looking at this is more of the social impacts of the Industrial Revolution on the everyday, life of an average person. So pause the video on these parts, take a read on these, look at these, and then jot down some of these things again. You need to know standard of living. This is just the expectations that we live by, the quality of life we have. And so hopefully, again, this is something that makes sense to you based off the videos you've already watched and the things I talk about. And here's the government involvement. So again, laissez-faire will be early on. The government doesn't get involved. But then as a result, you'll see workers realizing the only way they can get help, if the government's not going to help and the owners are going to take advantage of them, is to organize things called unions, to come together to get better working conditions, to improve those, and improvement in pay and safety and time off, stuff like that. So, and we'll see consumers as well impacted in the sense of government making sure businesses have to follow certain codes and regulations to deliver a clean product, a safe product for the consumer so they don't eat something and die or get really sick. And then you also have to help businesses out in the sense of create competition. Competition leads to companies having to improve their quality of their product rather than having monopoly and then charging whatever they want for whatever product they have if it is needed. And we'll see the government take control of some vital industries like, for example, coal industries or oil industries, because that supplies heat and keeps people alive. And we'll see that happen. And then you guys, again, if we look at leaving a legacy, the Industrial Revolution, we're going to start the next unit with World War I. One of the negatives is this Industrial Revolution is going to lead to imperialism, and this imperialism is going to be a byproduct of imperialism will be the empires kind of stepping on each other's toes, lacking trust, forming alliances, and then going to war, and the worst war in human history up to that point. And then we also have a legacy, and you guys, for better or worse, we're going to see that this is going to lead eventually public schools and making sure that, education is something that we focus on in society and a nation. And, we need to make sure these people working in these cities and these factories get educated, and these children get educated, because they are the future of the country. And if they're getting educated, they're becoming empowered, they're becoming more confident, they're becoming more assertive, they're coming up with new ideas and innovations, they're being productive, they're finding ways to improve. And we see that this will be a byproduct. I know you guys don't love school, most of you. This is a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution, organizing and getting the government more involved in every day. And life lessons, again, the more knowledge you get, the more empowered and more confident you're going to have. Education is the key. You guys watch these videos, and hopefully we're inspired by Eric Thomas. And this just kind of reinforces, again, the power of scarcity. Which tomato is more valuable? All these individuals, or this one by itself? And again, whatever you do in life, get really skilled at something. Find your niche so you're able to, make a living out of whatever you enjoy doing. Now, if we again, I'm gonna stop it here. This will be the part 2. I'm gonna put another part on here. This will get us into again early on Industrial Revolution.